Alo. Alo, rồi. Bây giờ là qua cái khâu đấy rồi. Đó, bây giờ là qua cái khâu gọi là security rồi. Đây là mình vào bên trong ha. Đó, biết là ok đó, bây giờ mình vào bên trong đây. Đó. Đây là cái vòm mà chúng ta thấy là xung quanh đi, cái tầng này tầng dưới này lúc nãy mình vào nè. Đó, lúc này mình vào cái ngõ security này mình đấy đó. Rồi bên này là báo chí, đó, truyền thông của họ. Ở đây là mình đi vào. Đây là Canon House Office Building ở tầng 3. Rồi đây chúng ta thấy đây Việt Nam Rice Day. Hello, đây là Russian quý phải không?
Dạ đúng rồi.
Đây có người hỏi thăm.
Hello,
thì Dương
xin chào.
bên đó lúc này ở ngoài làm livestream. Có người hỏi có thấy Russian quý không? Tại Russian quý cùng đi.
Ở đây
nha,
xin chào. Anh tên gì?
Đình Đại.
Ok. Em có nghe tên của anh rất là nhiều. Ok, nice to meet you anh.
Ok, hôm nay mới được gặp Russian quý, cũng có theo dõi kênh của Russian quý nhiều lắm. Bây giờ mới gặp được ở ngoài. Nhìn còn trẻ hơn bên trong nữa.
Thank you. Nhìn nhỏ hơn bên trong đúng không? Yeah. Thì có nhiều người nói là khi mà nhìn trong chương trình thì tưởng em cao lắm, nhưng mà ở ngoài thì thấy nhỏ.
Đâu thấy cũng cao đó chứ, thấy cũng cao so với người Việt mình thấy cũng cao đó chứ.
Ủa mà anh đi chương trình này lâu chưa?
Mới đi lần đầu.
Lần đầu tiên. Số 2 em
lần đầu tiên được tham dự.
Ok.
Dạ, Russian quý cũng lần đầu tiên. Ok, đó là để mình vào. Ok. Đó. Ở đây. Ở đây trời ơi, quang cảnh. Đó, các anh chị thấy không? Mình đó, có đây của Việt TV.
The Chinese are protesting big time.
Chị Destiny Nguyễn phải không? Dạ, Đình Đại.
Hello. That's sweet. Wow, that's good.
Đây là chị Destiny Nguyễn. Biết nhau gặp có theo dõi rất là nhiều. Hôm nay mới được gặp ngày lần đầu tiên.
Nghe ca sĩ này all the time mà bây giờ mới thấy.
Rồi đó. Đây là cái phòng họp 11 tháng 5 ngày nhân quyền cho Việt Nam. Thì đây là cái ngày mà theo Đình Đại được biết là chính phủ Hoa Kỳ được thông qua cái nghị quyết là cái ngày 11 tháng 5 này là cái ngày gọi là nhân quyền dành cho Việt Nam. Tức có nghĩa là họ cũng công nhận cái vấn đề nhân quyền của Việt Nam. Bây giờ là mình vừa mới vào thôi, Mình vừa mới tới thôi, mình chưa có đang sửa soạn. Đây này, có anh Minh Phương này.
Đẹp.
Sao? Hôm nay cũng gặp anh Minh Phương Nguyện ở đây, anh em không hẹn mà gặp của ngày nhân quyền.
Phương, cái chương trình của Cali Phương nắm cái gì?
Dạ.
Rồi, như vậy cho bác sĩ biết là giờ nào nó đi.
Dạ.
Mà có cái list không thì cho biết.
Dạ có để gửi qua.
Để gửi nha ha.
Đình Đại, ca sĩ Đình Đại, nhạc sĩ
Ca
Đình
sĩ,
Đại.
nhạc sĩ Đình Đại hả?
Dạ.
Wow.
Từ bên Pháp ra.
Dạ.
Rồi selfie 3 người đi.
Dạ.
Ok rồi.
Đây là anh.
Này, có ông người này.
Đây.
Chụp đi, con người selfie nữa.
Dạ.
Hay là Đình Đại đứng
Đây
đây
là
cho
bác sĩ Võ Đình Hữu.
Đứng đây cho ai?
Dạ. Đây bác sĩ Võ Đình Hữu. Đây.
Và selfie 3 người đi.
Rồi,
Ok. Ok.
Đây là bác sĩ Võ Đình Hữu đó. Hôm nay là chúng ta
Rồi.
rất có cái
Ở
vinh
Nam Cali
hạnh đó
luôn.
là được gặp
Rồi.
anh của mình Nam Cali.
Nam Cali, ok, tốt, nhưng mà vậy là
Dạ,
rất là vui.
ok, dạ.
Giỏi ha, mà được
Tuần vừa rồi, tháng vừa rồi Đại cũng có ở dưới Nam Cali. Kỳ này qua để đi hát ở đây.
rất là đẹp.
Đây. Cái khán phòng này rất rất là đẹp. Về lát nữa là anh cũng có anh speech rồi đấy. Ok. Hay quá. Đây là lần đầu tiên em tham dự những cái buổi như thế này. Và em thấy là người Việt ở khắp mọi nơi nên tham dự trải nghiệm một cái buổi như thế này. Rất là hay.
Giờ đó là coi như hầu hết những cộng đồng ở trên đất Mỹ cũng như một vài nơi khác thì họ có điều tụ về đây trong cái dịp này. Như tối hôm qua anh em tụ tập ở nhà của một anh em trong ban tổ chức đó, thì nghĩa là thâu đêm.
Như vậy là hầu như là rất nhiều tiểu bang ở trên đất Mỹ.
Nam Cali, Bắc Cali, Seattle, Florida, Atlanta, Houston
và
Dallas,
có cả Paris nữa chứ.
bây giờ có Paris nữa. Tốt quá.
Chắc chắn là sắp tới là hy vọng là Paris hay là ở châu Âu sẽ tham dự vào những cái buổi như thế này, những buổi rất là có ý nghĩa, tổ chức rất là tốt.
Thì một chút nữa thì anh sẽ nói về vấn đề nhân quyền của Việt Nam đang xâm hại tới người dân như thế nào.
Anh là một trong những người mà anh có thể nói về vấn đề nhân quyền, vì anh cũng từng là nạn nhân của cái vấn đề.
Thì anh kêu gọi các quan chức Hoa Kỳ phải yêu cầu nhà nước Việt Nam phải thả hết tất cả tù nhân lương tâm.
Dạ vâng.
Một lúc luôn, trước khi bước tới những cái sự việc khác.
Mà phải nói là anh là một trong những tù nhân lương tâm mà anh đã có một cái may mắn rất là lớn, là vì nhờ một số các anh chị em đã đứng ra vận động, và nhất là vị hôn thê của anh là người đã kiên trì để mà đấu tranh cho anh ra được nhà tù.
Đúng vậy. Thật sự thì cái người mà mạnh mẽ nhất đó là vợ tôi, và cái người mà để đạt được những cái hiệu quả đó là bà dân biểu Katie Porter của Nam Cali.
Tức có nghĩa là cũng ở ngay những cái nơi này là những cái nơi mà đã từng vận động để mà anh được thoát khỏi nhà tù cộng sản.
Đúng. Và cũng tất cả những anh em mà trong cái ban tổ chức này cũng đã âm thầm vận động rất là nhiều việc với các dân biểu.
Như vậy thì chắc chắn là cái ngày hôm nay nó sẽ là cái ngày rất có ý nghĩa, rất là đặc biệt.
Đúng. Sau 3 năm Covid không có được tổ chức ở công chúng, thành ra mấy năm trước thì tổ chức ở trên online không mà. Năm nay được mà được trong cái phòng này.
Tình cờ anh em gặp nhau lại đây thì cũng là một cái vinh dự, và cũng là một cái điều rất là có ý nghĩa khi mà gặp lại anh ở ngay cái nơi này. Cái nơi mà hình như là cộng đồng người Việt chúng ta cũng đã vận động rất nhiều lần ở đây để cho các anh em tù nhân lương tâm khác, phải không anh?
Đúng.
Như vậy là cái nơi này là một cái nơi mà chứa đầy nhiều cái kỷ niệm và ý nghĩa đặc biệt với người Việt chúng ta. Xin cảm ơn anh. Chương trình của mình chúng ta bắt đầu. Đó, các anh chị có thấy là chúng ta ngày hôm nay được tham dự một cái buổi rất là ý nghĩa như thế này. Các anh chị thấy là rất là mình phải nói là ở trong cái bầu không khí rất là cảm động. các anh chị đã tổ chức mà cùng chung tay với nhau tổ chức, và hầu như á là đều là làm một cách vô vụ lợi.
I see you online.
Đó, chúng ta có cờ Hoa Kỳ và quốc kỳ của quốc gia Việt Nam.
Đây, những người kế thầy.
Đây là chúng ta bắt đầu. Đây là một cái trải nghiệm mà người Việt ở bên châu Âu của chúng ta, nếu như mà có cái dịp mà hàng năm đi sang bên này du lịch vào tháng 5 thì đồng thời chúng ta có thể tham gia một cái buổi đầy ý nghĩa như thế này.
Lần này các anh ở bên lên một cảnh phó quản lên trên cái chỉ lên
Đừng lại quên cái cây để cái chân, cho nên là giờ phải cầm lại tay thế này, nó rất hầm hỏi. Nhưng mà thôi cũng cố gắng vì nghĩa lớn để mà quý anh chị có thể theo dõi được cái buổi đầy ý nghĩa này, trang nghiêm và đầy ý nghĩa. Vâng, Đình Đại xin chào lại tổng chào tất cả mọi anh chị em. Các anh chị thấy là cái dòng chữ trên đó đó, Việt Nam Human Rights Day. Được Đại thấy lúc này có gặp Russian Quý, Russian Quý đang quay ở bên kia, góc ở bên kia đó. Như là đem theo chân quay.
Good morning, honored guests, ladies, gentlemen, dear friends. The organizing committee of the 29th Annual Commemoration of the Vietnam Human Rights Day welcome you. Thank you very much for your precious participation today. United States of America, the leading country of the world, the nation that has granted us democracy, freedom, happiness, prosperity, and safety. We would like to thank the U.S. government and our fellow Americans who have made us feel blessed, who have supported the millions of Vietnamese families since the fall of Saigon, the Republican regime.
April 1975. To salute the flags at the national anthems of the United States
Đúng rồi,
of America
mình đang ở Quốc hội Hoa Kỳ.
of Vietnam. If you please watch. The national anthem of the United States of America by Jennifer Will.
Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
The yellow flag with the three white stripes has been recognized as the heritage flag of the overseas Vietnamese. It represents the flag of freedom, democracy, and human rights. The national anthem of Republic of Vietnam. Quốc ca Việt Nam Cộng hòa. Kính mời Đức Hương hát.
Hãy công dân ơi, quốc gia đất này giải phóng, để lòng của
Vì hy sinh cái gì non sông, vì tương lai quốc dân cùng sông pha có tên, làm sao cho sông từ đây tôi vững bền, cho vơi vơi trên cơn gió thủ mơ lên mau đào Việt Nam, người dòng nước biên phải cơn gia đi, người công dân luôn vững bền tâm trí, hùng tráng quyết chiến đấu vươn ra phát lên bằng tiếng người nước Nam cho hết muôn đời. Công dân ơi, các công dân ơi, nó làm cho khói bật hoa tờn thần vẽ vang, ngoài dòng xứng danh nghìn năm dòng dòng nước hồng.
Following is a minute of silence to pay tribute to our fallen heroes, American citizens, who have given their all for the cause of freedom in Vietnam and elsewhere. This also in remembrance of those who have sacrificed their lives for the ideals of freedom, democracy, and human rights in the world. have just concluded the opening ceremony. Thank you. Please take your seats.
Sorry, tụi em đi rồi chứ.
Dạ.
Bạn ngồi đây không có thấy rõ.
Dạ. Chị ngồi đi, chị ngồi đi.
Không sao, tại anh phải thôi.
May I now introduce Mr. Kevin Kim Pham, Chair of the Organizing Committee.
The Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable members of the British Congress, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you all for joining us today to commemorate the 29th anniversary of Vietnam Human Rights Day, May 11th. On this day, 30 years ago, Dr. ĐÜINH ĐዔI, on behalf of his non-violent movement, human rights in Vietnam, issued the manifesto demanding that the Hanoi's regime must respect basic human rights for all Vietnamese citizens. Let the people of Vietnam enjoy freedom and democracy in a democratic society without harassment or intimidation. For this, Dr. ĐÜINH was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 5 years of now arrest. In an effort to show support for the non-violent movement for human rights in Vietnam, the United States Congress, Section 109, passed a joint resolution, SJ-168, designating May 11 as a Vietnam Human Rights Day. Subsequently, President Bill Clinton signed into public law 103-258 on May 25, 1994. Since then, every May 11, we commemorate these days as the Vietnam Human Rights Day. You know, we gather here in this beautiful historic building because our event is virtually hosted and sponsored by Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania. Without his great support, we could not be able to organize such a big event as this. We owe him and his staff a great deal. Please give a big hand to thank the great Congressman from Pennsylvania. We would also like to thank and appreciate members of this distinguished Congress who joined Congressman Fitzpatrick to co-host and co-sponsor the event. Our heartfelt thanks to Acting Assistant Secretary of State Irving Barkley, who oversees the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. She's here representing the State Department and in our keynote speaker today. Our special thanks to the leaders of who represent AFL, CIO, various international human rights organizations, international and local media. We are grateful for your presence every year. To our freedom friends from Tibet, China, and Laos delegations, we appreciate your attendance and support very much. We strongly believe that by joining forces, our voice can be heard better, and together we can achieve our goal, that is freedom and democracy for Asia. And lastly, we would like to recognize our Vietnamese American delegations from across the U.S. Thank you for your support. The President showed to the Honorable Government our solidarity and determination. As pledged together, our brother sister, and we will continue commemoration of Vietnam Human Rights each year until all the Vietnamese are free. We sincerely hope that you all will enjoy the event to the end. And now, I'd like to ask Mr. Richard Chen, liaison officer of the Vietnamese American community in Pennsylvania, who introduce our host and main sponsor for the event, the great congressman from Pennsylvania, the Honorable Brian Fitzpatrick. Mr. Richard.
You may have guessed we have plenty of things to do. My name is Matt Trom. I'm the Vice President of the is my honor. I also want to thank you. So we're going to adapt and change, but I'm going to move and introduce the chairman of the board of this big Vietnam Human Rights May 11. He is the gentleman that he can tell you more about the background, the history, what we did right, what we did wrong, and what we're trying to improve upon. So without further ado, the chairman of the board, Professor Van.
Honorable members of Congress, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, 23 years ago, on May 11, 1990, Dr. ĐÜINH ĐዔI, on behalf of his nonviolent movement for human rights in Vietnam, issued a manifesto which called upon Hanoi to respect basic human rights, accept a multi-party system, and restore the rights of the Vietnamese people to choose their own form of government according to their will through free and fair election. Because of this, Dr. ĐዔI was arrested and sentenced for 20 years in prison in 1991. 40 years later, Vietnam Human Rights Day took shape following a development that began in Virginia, initiated by Assemblyman Alan Mayer and sponsored by 8 co-sponsors. On February 8, 1994, the Virginia House of Representatives passed Resolution number 225. The Virginia Senate also passed on February 17, established May 11 as Vietnam Human Rights Day in Virginia. Assemblyman Alan Mayer stated, the manifesto published in May 11, 1990 speaks about the Vietnamese people's hope and aspiration. It is no different from the Declaration of Independence and historical document demanding freedom and justice for the United States. Immediately thereafter, an effort was promoted in Vietnamese refugee community to advocate that the United States Congress recognized May 11 as Vietnam Human Rights Day. As a result, 2 resolutions, HR-333, introduced by Congresswoman Leslie Burns, and Resolution SR-168, introduced by Senator James Rose. Both were respectively passed in the House and in the Senate. Particularly in the joint meeting of the United States Congress, they were amended and merged into one big joint resolution, namely SJ-168. Joint Resolution SJ-168 was unanimously passed by the U.S. Congress and then sent to the executive branch. On May 20, 1994, President Bill Clinton signed into public law 103-258, designated May 11 as Vietnam Human Rights Day. Since then, Vietnam Human Rights Day has created intensive preparation inside Vietnam and throughout Southeast Asia. Each May 11 marks one of the most important events at present for political freedom and human rights in Vietnam. We are reminded of the human rights abuses that continue in Vietnam and how important it is to raise awareness and to take action to protect and improve human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, TRÄ indeed happened due to our active lobbying efforts and volunteers for human rights activists inside and outside Vietnam. We have continued to increase pressure on the communist regime in Hanoi to release all prisoners of conscience and political prisoners. 12 Vietnam human rights activists and bloggers currently have been detained for exercising freedom of information, expression, and labor rights. They are Lê Văn Dũng, Lê Mạnh Hà, Đinh Văn Hải, Bùi Văn Thuận, Trinh và Phương, Nguyễn Thị Tâm, Trương Văn Vũ, Nguyễn Lân Thắng, Mai Phan Lợi, Trang Đình Bạch, Nguyễn Thị Thanh. They are all innocent people and have committed no crimes. They should be released immediately and unlegitimately. Our concern and worry today comes from realization that Vietnam is suffering an ill economy. Trade is deficit, discontent and anger from their people, according to the recommendation of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. Two, one, designate Vietnam as a country of particular concern for religious freedom. Two, support open and free internet in Vietnam as an issue promoting United States economic interest and advance internationally recognized human rights. Three, urge the President to use the authority under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act to impose economic sanctions on those responsible for or complicit violation of human rights. Today, March 29, the commemoration of historic Vietnam Heritage Day. It is our responsibility and duty to ensure that we continue to collectively fight for freedom, democracy, and human rights in Vietnam. Not just today, but every day. We are thinking of all prisoners of conscience and human rights activists. We stand with them. Thank you very much for listening.
Just want to move the agenda forward. We have a congresswoman actually busy working multitasking here. She actually arrived early. And one key fact I want to introduce her. Some of Congress representatives have a long bio, but I'd like to highlight only significant events that ties in with this event. That's something that's somewhat unusual. But I'd like to read one thing, and maybe it's a lead-in for Congresswoman Loughran. She was actually, and this maybe it's on your website, it said Zoe is proud to have co-founded the Congressional Caucus on Vietnam with former Representative Sanchez and Tom Davis from Virginia. So without further ado, please come on.
Co-sponsorship of the Vietnam Caucus. I was honored to be one of the first, and I still am. We stand up for human rights in Vietnam, and we will be introducing again today the bipartisan Vietnam Human Rights Act to hold the communists accountable for their gross abuses of human rights. And I just want you to know that we stand with you. I have to go in a minute before the House to argue against the bill whose intent would be to turn away people fleeing from Congress and Washington. That was the intent. That would be the impact. And so I will not be able to stay any longer with you. But I'll just remember this. I was actually on the phone trying to get relatives of Vietnamese Americans in San Jose. I was on the phone with the American Embassy when the line went dead and Saigon fell. And hundreds of thousands of people who were oppressed came to the United States and enriched our country. And I'd like us to remember President Jimmy Carter, because he was the president who helped us in America welcome the Vietnamese refugees, and our country has been immensely strengthened by your presence. We stand with you, we thank you, and I will happily wear the yellow flag.
Thank you, Congresswoman Loughran. With uncles, grandchildren. A round of applause.
Good morning, and honored guests and ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to introduce to you my cousin, Master, who is committed to promote freedom and democracy at home and abroad. Before representing his hometown of Pennsylvania, 1st Congress Congressional District, Ryan Fitzpatrick served our nation as an FBI special agent. In the 118th Congress, Congressman Ryan Fitzpatrick sat on the Ways and the Means Committee and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman Fitzpatrick has earned a reputation for being a true champion for his constitution, always going above and beyond capital P. He is a beloved representative and a very
One of the things we do in our office, there's 195 countries on the planet, and I found a representative designee for each of those 195 countries to serve as my liaison. Teresa, where are you, Teresa? Teresa is my designee for Vietnam relations, Vietnam policy. She's done a tremendous job. She's been with us for several years. So thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you all for being here. Obviously, the fact that you're here, you understand the importance of coming to DC, working hand in glove with representatives, with their staffs. Number one, to educate. To educate members of Congress who have a very broad bandwidth and a lot of times are 20 miles wide and only a few inches deep in terms of policy because there's so much on the plate. For the people that eat, sleep, and breathe these issues every day, that understand the nuance, understand the details of what's happening, where progress is made, where progress is lacking, so that we can take that and convert that into policy. The one thing that we all share in common as human beings is a yearning and desire to be free. They believe in equality, they believe in justice, they believe in the respect of the most basic human rights, which is dignity, equality, fairness, and the rule of law. We all share that. It's baked in our genetic DNA as human beings, every single one of us that are born into this planet. And you all from the Vietnamese community love your homeland, as you should, and you're fighting for your homeland because you want your homeland to get better. You want your families and friends who live there to start to enjoy the same types of freedoms we have here in the United States, the same type of justice and equality we have here in the United States. And obviously you're here because you love America. And we're all from somewhere else. I'm from Ireland. You all are from Vietnam. One of the greatest gifts my parents gave to me was, number one, teach me to be a proud American, best country in the world, but also never losing touch with your cultural and ancestral roots. And that's a great gift that you all give to your children, keeping them in touch with the food, the language, the dance, the music, culture. It's a great gift because it tells them who they are as human beings, where they came from, where their ancestors came from. You all are all here to raise awareness of human rights abuses. They are well documented, they are undisputable, and the United States, as a world leader, has a role to play in fighting back against that. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox, a lot of tools at our disposal, because Vietnam needs America just like America needs Vietnam. We need strong bilateral agreements, strong bilateral relations, intelligence sharing, trade agreements to strengthen and better both countries mutually. So thank you for having me. And if you want to swing by our office, you're certainly welcome. It's literally right down the hall here. And to meet our staff. I used to be on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Is on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I am no longer because I had to roll out because of Ways and Means. But young Kim, you ought to be very, very proud of her. She's now has the gavel over the entire continent of Asia for the Foreign Affairs Committee. And I know she cares deeply about this issue as well. So you're in very, very good hands. And Michelle Steele as well. God bless Michelle. Thank you. behalf of all of us, thank you for co-hosting this and serving the group for us today. So we'd like to have something special for you before you leave.
Dear distinguished guests, it is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker today, the Honorable Erin Barclay, who represents the State Department. Erin Barclay is a real member of the Senior Executive Service and serves concurrently as the Acting Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, and as coordinator for Global Democratic Review in the Office of the Under-Secretary for Civilian Security, Human Rights and Democracy. She is a recipient of the 2021 President Grant Award, the 2020 Franklin Allen Tax Harris Human Rights Diplomacy Award for the United Nations Association of the National Capital Region, and numerous State Department Performance Awards. Today, Assistant Secretary Barclay will address us about the role of human rights in the U.S. policy toward Vietnam. Dear distinguished guests, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Honorable Acting Assistant Secretary Erin Barclay.
We've moved from a history of conflict and division to a comprehensive partnership that spans political, security, economic, and most importantly, people-to-people ties. The United States is confident that the positive momentum in this relationship will continue. We have a common sense of purpose and a common vision for a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific region, spanning from our close collaboration on war legacy issues to regional to human rights issues, to regional security, and shared prosperity. As reflected in our respective declarations of independence, that common vision includes a joint commitment to respecting human rights. Both of our countries were founded on the idea that all people are equal from birth, and all people have certain fundamental human rights that today are captured in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, including importantly the freedom of expression, the freedom of association, and the freedom of religion and faith. Thus, while we seek to deepen our ties with Vietnam, our engagement remains guided by our commitment to these fundamental human rights. That's why we have repeatedly emphasized to the Vietnamese government that demonstrable progress to protect human rights is essential to strengthening our relationship in the future. Now more than ever, we look to Vietnam to address our growing concerns over Vietnam's restriction on human rights and fundamental freedoms. As you know, Secretary of State Anthony issues, and the need to respect freedom of expression, association, religion and belief, and law. We are greatly concerned about the government of Vietnam's worsening record in certain human rights, especially when it comes to the fundamental freedoms the Secretary raised. At the most recent U.S.-Vietnam Human Rights Dialogue, I had the opportunity to urge the Vietnamese government to amend its laws and policies and allow all individuals to express their views, even and especially when they differ from those of the government. There is a really deeply troubling trend of harassment, unjust arrests, and harsh prison sentences targeting journalists, human rights offenders, and everyday Vietnamese citizens who are peacefully expressing their views, including criticizing the government. For example, we were very disappointed that a Vietnamese court sentenced political activist and blogger Nguyen Long Thanh to 6 years in prison in April. The work of Thanh and other journalists is essential to building prosperous and resilient societies. They help identify and give local communities a voice in addressing such problems as environmental pollution, corruption, and access to public services. We continue to advocate for Thang's release, as well as other political prisoners, including Pham Nguyen Chong, Chun Nguyen Sat Thuc, Nguyen Tay Khong, and Nguyen Ma Ten. These human rights offenders remain in detention for their peaceful activities to promote human rights, including freedom of religion and belief, and some have been detained for over a decade. But these are not isolated incidents. Human rights organizations estimate that there are more than 160 prisoners of conscience in Vietnam. I pledge to you today that the U.S. government will continue to raise these cases and these issues with the government of Vietnam. We will continue to call on the government to release all prisoners of conscience and respect their fundamental freedoms and human rights, including the freedom of movement. We also call on Vietnam to reduce burdensome bureaucratic restrictions on civil society. Civil society plays a critical role in Vietnam and in our own country, among other things, in supporting government efforts to address pressing social problems, filling gaps in public services, and promoting civic engagement, including by minority ethnic and religious groups. Unfortunately, independent civil society is under threat in Vietnam. Most of you have expressed concern on this issue to us, and what the future looks like for those who wish to work together on projects that benefit all in Vietnam. We share your concern, and we support civil society in this vital work. At the same time, we will continue to press the Vietnamese government to allow civil society to operate without restrictions. Now, I would be remiss not to note that we have seen some positive long-term trends on other human rights issues, including slow but notable improvements to align domestic labor laws with international labor standards and to protect the rights of women, people with disabilities, and LGBTIQ+ persons to live free from discrimination and violence. We have and will continue to urge the government to sustain these efforts and to bring its actions into compliance with its international obligations and commitments. This modest progress, however, does not extend to all marginalized populations or exercises of freedom of religion practices. We are concerned that the government of Vietnam's control over religious practices significantly limits religious freedom, and that Vietnam's laws include vague provisions that restrict religious freedom in the stated interest of national security and social unity. Religious leaders, particularly those representing groups without recognition or certificates of registration, continue to report incidents of government harassment, including forced renunciations of faith, physical assaults, arrests, and prosecutions. Unregistered religious groups also continue to encounter difficulties in carrying out religious practices and gatherings. We urge the government to allow members of all religious groups to peacefully exercise their faith. Last year, Secretary Blinken designated Vietnam as a special watch list country on our International Religious Freedom Report for engaging in or tolerating severe Vietnam must take significant and lasting actions to strengthen protections for religious freedom if it wants to avoid future designations. The United States works to promote accountability for individuals who have been involved in gross violations of human rights, including recently designating Mo Pham Nguyen, a former Vietnamese foreign officer at the Ladi prison station under our 7031C authority for sanctions. So, in conclusion, I hope my message to you today is clear. While the U.S. will continue to work to strengthen our relationship with Vietnam, we will not lose sight of the importance of seeking to ensure that the government of Vietnam respects the human rights of all of its citizens. We believe that is in the long interest of Vietnam and the United States. Let me close by thanking you again for your continued engagement and support. Your insights, recommendations, and updates help shape how our understanding of human rights in Vietnam and how we can improve them in the future. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you and talking further tomorrow as well, so thank you.
Well, I just want to thank all the Congress and Congressmen who be here. And I apologize for a little bit of commotion back there because we're trying to coordinate and adapt and move. They do have work to do. And instead of reading bio and telling you a lot of jokes, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next speaker, Congresswoman Young Kim. Big round of applause for her.
Congresswoman Young Kim, and I represent California's 40th Congressional District, which is in Southern California in South Orange County. I've had the pleasure of representing that area since my first election in 2020. But prior to coming to Washington, I have worked as a congressional staff serving as Director of Asian Affairs for former Chairman of Foreign Affairs Committee, Ed Royce, who is a dear friend of the Vietnamese American community, champion of the Vietnam human rights. And so I carry that work and experience to my work as a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and currently serving as chairwoman of the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee. So this is a very, very important issue to me. So every year when we gather in Washington, D.C. and throughout the United States to hold the Human Rights Day to raise awareness of the ongoing atrocities that is occurring in Vietnam. I want to thank our friends like Dr. Hu Vo, who comes from Southern California in my areas, and there are many Vietnamese American community leaders that have worked with me as a member of the APCAC that I had created in 1994, that is Asian Pacific Congressional Advisory Council. I have included all of the community leaders to come and have a regular conversation about the issues that is important to not only the domestic issues that affect the Vietnamese American community, but what is happening, continuing to happen in Vietnam that has to do with your fight to bring freedom and democracy in Vietnam, because it is still ongoing. So I wanted to just add my voice to that end, and just wanted to share with you my experience and my understanding of the situation comes directly from having met with many of your religious leaders like Taek Won Do, Le Quang Liang. This was in early 2000 when I traveled to Vietnam as a member of the staff as well as the congressional delegation that traveled there to meet with them, to actually get out to the rural areas where they were under house arrest. And they told us about what is actually happening. It is no coincidence when one by one, when your religious leaders and political dissidents disappeared by supposedly the reported accidents. It is no accident when that happens. So trust me when I say I know about the struggles that you are still having to fight for your freedom and democracy in your country, in your homeland. So I will continue to do my part, especially as my I will go ahead and continue to work on that regard, but as you heard from our speaker, we want to improve our relations with the U.S. and Vietnam. And we have to make inroads in that. However, we cannot do that on the backs of those still struggling. So those improvements in human rights will open the door for closer cooperation and shared priorities and interests. So with that, I want to thank the original founders of the Vietnam Caucus, and I want to thank our current co-chairs of the Vietnam Congressional Caucus. I see my dear friend here, Congresswoman Michelle Steele, and Congressman Luke Correa, who was here but had to leave because we all have something to do here. So on that note, I'm going to leave you in the good hands of the next speaker. Thank you so much for all your
Congresswoman Kim. Well, while researching the background and finding something unique about all the congressmen and congresswomen, as Congresswoman Kim mentioned about the Vietnam Caucus. And this year, I believe it's on January 24th, earlier this year, they have multiple members who are part of that. It's Korea, Steele, Lofgren, and Smith. So without further ado, we have the next speaker, one of the four. So I'd like to take a round of applause for
Thank you so much. Good job, Libby. I'd love to meet all of you here because I have the biggest Vietnamese American community in my district. As a co-chair of bipartisan Congressional Vietnam Caucus, this is the first time Congressman Luke Correa and I serve as co-chairs from Orange County, from the same area. And I am honored to be here today to have an opportunity to speak with you all as we mark the 29th annual commemoration of Vietnam Human Rights Day. This day is especially important to me, not only because I chair the Vietnamese caucus, but because the district I represent include Little Saigon, Westminster, Fountain Valley, Buena Park, and Fullerton, which is home of the largest population of Vietnamese anywhere in the world outside of Vietnam. Many of my Vietnamese constituents are first-generation Americans like me. The stories they tell of fleeing communism to find freedom in the United States are both tragic and inspiring. Earlier this month, I introduced a bipartisan resolution with Congressman Correa, my Vietnam Caucus co-chair, to commemorate Black April, the fall of Saigon. First and foremost, our resolution marks the 48th anniversary of the tragic collapse of the Republic of Vietnam in 1975. We should not repeat this again. It honors not only the tens of thousands of U.S. Armed Services who served in Vietnam, many of whom gave their lives, but also the hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese who have resettled in the United States. It celebrates the vibrant communities they have built here and their numerous contributions to making this nation the greatest country in the world. Through this resolution, I'm proud to play a part of ensuring that the victims of communism are not forgotten. But human rights in Vietnam are not just a concern of the past. This issue that we must continue to address today. Many of my constituents still have family members in Vietnam. The human rights situation there is of great concern to them and to me. They have loved ones who do not have freedom of speech. They do not have freedom of press. They do not have freedom of oppression. As we co-chair of the Congressional Vietnam Caucus, we must bring attention to this whenever possible. Last week, actually history. I've been proud to work with Representative Chris Smith, Lou Correa, and Ruth Lafren in reintroducing the Vietnam Human Rights Act. This important legislation will hold Vietnamese officials accountable for gross human rights abuses and help prioritize the protection of freedom. We also recognize that the Communist Party of Vietnam has been taking its cues from their counterpart in Beijing. We just had another meeting, except the Commission on China, Commission that we talked about human rights violation in CCP. Just had a hearing. That's why I'm pleased to share with you here today, Representative Correa and I will be introducing a resolution to address an urgent, unacceptable human rights situation in Vietnam. You all got from that resolution here. This is what we are introducing. Our resolution does a number of things. First, it makes it abundantly clear that the United States government condemns and opposes the Vietnamese government attacks on freedom of expression, speech, and the press, especially calls on Vietnamese government to release all of its political prisoners, including Van Nguyen Tran, who, as many of you know, is an independent journalist being imprisoned by the Vietnamese government for simply reporting the news. She's been in prison for more than 3 years now. It voices our support for the Vietnamese people and their protest against the oppression of their government. Finally, it calls on the Biden administration and all of our regional partners in ASEAN to coordinate pressure and bring accountability to Vietnamese government for its human rights abuses. A number of our colleagues joined us just recently in writing to the President directly, urging him to take concrete action to secure the release of Van Nguyen Tran and other political prisoners. Members of the Congressional Vietnam Caucus have also been in touch with the ambassador, ensuring he's aware of the oppression of journalists in Vietnam and urging him to take care that improved relations with Vietnam do not come at the expense of human rights in the country. It is my hope that one day the people of Vietnam will succeed in securing freedom for themselves and their homeland. Members of the Congressional Vietnam Caucus will continue our work to improve the human rights situation in Vietnam and ensure that in the end, freedom will win. In the meantime, I'm deeply honored to be an advocate for the Vietnamese living, working, thriving in California's 45th district. My both parents fled from Korea for freedom, and I understand exactly why you are here. I work hard and make sure it goes is not a violent. That's the basic rights that we really have to protect. So I am so honored to be here, and I hope that I have some of my Orange County Vietnamese friends here, and love to serve with you and love to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Steele. While preparing for this, I know that Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna said that she's going to come, and she did show up. Thank you very much. And I guess she's inspired by all this engagement here, and she accepted to come up and say a few words. One thing to note about her is, I believe, please correct me, that you're the first Mexican-American woman that representing Florida. Is that correct? If so, a big round of applause for
I'm incredibly honored to come and speak to all of you today. When Dr. Danny had actually reached out to me and asked if I would come do this, it wasn't a question in my mind on whether or not we would make time. First of all, I represent Florida's 13th Congressional District, which is in Pinellas County, right outside of Tampa Bay, and I believe on the East Coast we have one of the largest Vietnamese populations in the country. So, like some of my colleagues, I'm very honored to not just have a very personal connection, but to represent a constituent and base of hard workers, business owners, and people that genuinely understand the threats of communism. When I decided to run for office, I looked at the young people in our nation. I looked at our education systems, and I saw that they truly believe there is this movement that is trying to convince young people that socialism and communism is a good thing. And to me, that's scary, because that's our children, those are our grandchildren, that is the future generation of this country. And to see how history has repeated itself, to see what happened during the Vietnam War, to those that may not know, I myself am a veteran, and we have many veterans that did serve in Vietnam, and we understand firsthand what happens when communism takes over a country. And so I know I don't have much time to speak, but what I can tell you is the Vietnamese community to me is very important. My father passed away in January of this past year, but his fiance was Vietnamese, and so for the last about 5 years, we had very much close ties to the Vietnamese community, and she would tell me stories about growing up and seeing what happened to her country and why she had to flee and come to the United States. So you always have a friend in me. I look forward to joining the Vietnamese Congressional Caucus, and I look forward to championing these causes, not just for foreign relations, but also representation out of Pinellas County for all of you across the nation. Thank you very much.
This is a joke, but when you're working with representative or politicians, there aren't microphones that can block. Right? So that was a joke. All right, so without further ado, we're talking about Congresswoman and the lady in green timeline, actually. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Congresswoman Katie Porter. And I've done a little bit of research about you, and I don't know if you're going to talk about it, but I read a very heartfelt article about how you led a bipartisan group in requesting additional action to secure American Michael Wing's release from Vietnam. So on behalf of the community, thank you very much for that. Without further ado, big round of applause for Congresswoman Porter.
American population in the United States, and it is a tremendous and thriving community that continues to remember and honor the hardships and the suffering of the people of Vietnam, not just today on Remembrance Day, but constantly in their political activism and their community work. And so I'm proud to be here with you today and have a chance to talk with you. I talk often with the Vietnamese American community in Orange County, and one of the things they consistently express to me is how concerned they are about the political situation in Vietnam. Despite the economic progress that Vietnam is making, they are not making progress toward freedom and toward justice. The country, as you all know, is ruled by a single authoritarian party, the Communist Party of Vietnam, and since taking power in 1975, that government has amassed a human rights record that is among the worst in the world. Elections often occur under the exclusive approval of the Communist Party, and rarely, if ever, are candidates elected who criticize or even question the actions of the state. According to Human Rights Watch, and according to my constituents who have friends and family and loved ones still in Vietnam, the state prohibits independent or privately owned media outlets. It blocks access to websites. It frequently shuts down online communications, requires internet service providers to remove content or social media accounts that the state, in its exclusive judgment, deems politically unacceptable. And those who dare criticize Vietnam's government or the Communist Party run a very real risk of being surveilled, harassed, intimidated, assaulted, and arrested. This includes people like Orange County resident and my friend, Michael Lynn. He is here with us today. He was unjustly arrested in 2018 by the Vietnamese government for allegedly engaging in activities against the government. Michael was never told what law he broke, he was never shown any evidence, and he was detained with no formal charges ever being brought, nor any evidence of wrongdoing being presented. I began advocating for Michael's release before I was even sworn into Congress. I brought his beautiful, amazing wife, a nurse, Helen, as my first ever guest to the State of the Union. I sat with his 4 terrific daughters and mourned Michael's loss and absence from our community as they prayed for the safe return of their father. And I was so overjoyed to be able to welcome Michael home to Orange County when he was released from prison in Vietnam. And so thrilled to be able to have him here with us today as a tangible, visible presence in our community, showing and being able to speak from his personal experience about the injustices in Vietnam that we need to address. There are too many others who are still in Vietnam, who are denied the freedom to exercise their inalienable rights, who are unjustly jailed, incarcerated. The United States and the world must be forceful. We must be clear. We must condemn the rise of authoritarianism around the world, including in Vietnam. If Vietnam wishes to be the United States economic and trading partner, then they need to live up to the values that we expect of our allies. Throughout my time in Congress, I have fought to make human rights a priority, both at home and abroad. And I'm going to continue to stand in solidarity with the people of Vietnam in pursuing a future of liberty and justice for the Vietnamese Americans here that are our friends and neighbors and colleagues in the United States, and for the Vietnamese diaspora around the world, most particularly those who are living under authoritarianism in Vietnam. Thank you very much for letting me be part of your lives.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do here is, thank you for your patience. I'm going to introduce my Congresswoman from Virginia, talking about the first in Congress. Maybe I'm really biased because I'm from Northern Virginia. So it is my honor to introduce the first Congresswoman of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And by the way, personal note, I love that Metro line from Tyson's $2. So, and I want to thank you personally for that. Without further ado, Congresswoman Leslie.
I said, let's go for it. Let's make people aware of what's going on in Vietnam. 25 years later, we still are waiting for Vietnam to recognize human rights of its citizens. Now you have to recognize us, because 29 years means we're pretty resilient. It means that we have tenacity, and that we will always fight for human rights and not give up. That's what it means to me. You know, in the face of daily human rights being taken away by the communists in Vietnam, and we know what those freedoms are, the freedom of opinion, speech, movement, religion, women's rights, children's rights. We haven't heard too much about children's rights, but there is a large trafficking of children in Vietnam without protection. And that's something that I think we all abhor. We go through these litany of things that are missing. But you know, I heard a friend from the State Department say that the trend in human rights is not a trend. Since 1975, that's a habit. There's no trend there. This is the reality of human rights abuse. Now, we had an interesting thing that happened this last year. Everybody knows in the international community, Vietnam abuses human rights of its citizens. Everybody knows it. So, the human rights resolution that we look to for guidance comes from the United Nations, right? Founded by the United Nations, the resolution on human rights, it has all the rights outlined that we expect from ourselves and other nations. So the one player who doesn't abide by that resolution, there's many, but the one who I'm looking at is Vietnam. So they put them on the Human Rights Council last October. Can you imagine why? Why would the United Nations put Vietnam on the Human Rights Council when they don't do human rights for their citizens? It doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely crazy. You know, as a mother, I'm sure some of you, maybe most of you are parents. You know, you give your teenager $20 to clean up his room. And you say, look, here's $20 every week, you go clean up your room. And he comes to you at the end of the week and he said, I didn't clean up the room, but I want the 20 anyway. So you give him the 20, what happens next week? He doesn't clean it up again. So we've been relying on economic factors to get Vietnam to clean up its room. And it hasn't worked because they haven't changed. Since 1975, they have not changed. It's time. You know, the United States is Vietnam's second largest trading partner. We've got a lot of leverage, and we're not using it. We have to be more forceful than just give them that $20 at the end of the week to clean their room. We have to make sure that they enforce human rights. It's as simple as that. You know, I'm glad I'm here after 29 years. I didn't think I'd be here after 29 years, but I'm glad I am. Because with all of you, it shows that we will not give up the fight for human rights in Vietnam and around the rest of the world.
All right, so just want to acknowledge a few congressmen in this case that actually showed up, but had to go to work and vote, but may come back. Is Congressman Lee Korea. I want to thank him for coming, and hopefully he'll come back. He said he'll vote and he'll come right back. And also, I'd also like to hear from Congressman Chris Smith, who is actually a long partner and supporter of the VP's community. This is back a long, long time ago. And he's also said that he will be late, but he'll try to be here. And then one last quick comment before I turn it over to my co-MC. applause for the next MC, Miss Destiny Nguyen.
Thank you. So my name is Destiny Nguyen. I am an Vietnamese American president of Central Virginia and also a member of the board of Human Rights and Miss Leslie Byrne. Miss Leslie, we plan in the next years of 30 years. It's a big year, and you have to be here. And I would like to introduce the next guest in the U.S. CIRF, Mr. Ms. Chen.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Lindsay Chen. Thank you for the introduction. I'm here today representing the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USERF. USERF is an independent, bipartisan federal government body created nearly 25 years ago by the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. Our mandate is to monitor religious freedom worldwide and to make policy recommendations to the U.S. President, Congress, and Secretary of State. Every year, USERF publishes an annual report describing religious freedom conditions in countries that are considered the worst. We have consistently recommended Vietnam as a country of particular concern, or CPC, including our most recent annual report released earlier this month. USERF made this recommendation because we remain concerned that systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedom continue to occur in Vietnam throughout 2022. The government has continued to persecute independent, unregistered religious groups, including Hmong and Montagnard Christians, Cao Dai followers, Unified Buddhists, Wahao Buddhists, and many others. Ethnic minority Hmong and Montagnard Christians in Vietnam's northern and central highlands remain especially vulnerable to persecution, as authorities have continued to harass, detain, physically abuse, and force them to renounce their faith. We, of course, condemn this egregious abuses. As raised in the annual report, USERF is concerned about Vietnam's restrictive 2018 law on belief and religion, which imposes burdens on complicated registration requirements on groups. We have also observed uneven and inconsistent application of the law throughout the country. Additionally, in June 2022, the government issued 2 draft decrees on the implementation of this religious law. If passed, it could further restrict religious freedom in the country. USERF also pays close attention to the plight of religious prisoners of conscience. The government has imprisoned many religious freedom advocates and people of faith, including Nguyen Bach Chun, a renowned Wahao religious freedom advocate who is currently serving an 11-year sentence. France, the United States, and Vietnam has made great strides in their bilateral relations over the past 2 decades, spanning many areas of cooperation, including trade, security, education, and people-to-people ties. This growing relationship, however, cannot realize its fullest potential without respect for religious freedom and human rights. In fact, continued violations of religious freedom and human rights have prevented the 2 countries from forging a deeper and more constructive relationship. USERF will continue to urge the U.S. government to prioritize religious freedom in its foreign policy towards Vietnam and to ensure that geopolitical, economic, and security considerations do not outweigh religious freedom and human rights in this important bilateral relationship. I want to take this opportunity to thank our civil society partners for organizing this event commemorating the 29th Vietnam Human Rights Day. I am deeply grateful for your enduring efforts supporting the cause of religious freedom and human rights in Vietnam. And I do join all of you in looking forward to a day when all Vietnamese citizens can worship freely, safely, and without fear. Thank you.
know as your office is very important. We want to put Vietnam back in the CPC. His office is the one gonna put the name in with the State Department. So he's very important to us. Our next guest is going to be the most venerable Thich Quang Duc. He's the president of the Vietnamese American Unified Buddhist Church.
Dear honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, for Vietnamese, 12 years complete is a small circle. 60 years complete a large circle. This year, the United Buddhist Church of Vietnam is 60-year-old. UBCV in the last 50 years has matured in the suffering along with the Vietnamese people. The UBCV today is an independent religious organization under a totalitarian dictatorship under brutal caution. The Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam is still the voice of the Vietnamese people who believe in the Buddha's teaching in the Buddhist tradition and in the goal of serving the Dharma, the people, and the country of Vietnam. But it is not about UBCV, it's about human rights. It's not even about Vietnamese people, it's actually about us Americans. Because authoritarianism is very infectious, like COVID. It does not stop at a city or even a country. If they can spy on their people, then they want to send a balloon to spy on us. If they can threaten their people, then they want to sanction our congressmen or congresswomen. If they can violate human rights in Vietnam or China, they will try to violate our human rights here in this country. So, if you don't want to dictate in Vietnam or China to violate our rights, we have to stop them where they are based. It is not simple. It's also very simple that the Vietnamese communists will take side with the Chinese communists because they are actually the same. And because they are the same, we can't survive without the other. They are so similar that if you read the State Department's report on violations of religious freedom by China, you can also replace the country name with Vietnam and you get the same picture. So, in my humble opinion, if we want to protect our freedom of religion, we must help the people of Vietnam have religious freedom. Thank you for your attention.
I would like to interview our Vietnamese American next generation, the U.S. retired Navy Captain Hometown.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. My name is Hong Kao. I'm a retired Navy captain. This is the scariest sound you'll hear when you grow up in a Vietnamese, in a communist country. Okay? This means they're coming after you. This is the last sound my mom heard before her father was taken away. He was a magistrate in Hue City, and he was taken away by the communists in the middle of the night, and she was only 12 years old at the time. This is the sound my father heard when they took away his dad when he was 13 years old, and he had to be the man of the house. Because the communists will come to you. They'll take you away in the middle of the night. They'll capture you, they'll torture you, and they'll kill you. Because that's what communists do. And Congresswoman Luna was absolutely right. Today, there's a fad going on in this society thinking that communism is something cool to go after. And they hide under many names like communism, socialism, Marxism, and now they call it equity. Because it sounds a lot like equality, right? Equity means that you finish in the same place, but equality means you start at the same place. That's not how America was built. The last moments I had in Vietnam, my mom was sewing notes into our clothes to say, "This is my son, please take care of him," if we get separated. But thank goodness we made it out, we all made it out. But that wasn't the same for many people. There's still many people in Vietnam who get imprisoned because they speak out against Hanoi. Just this Monday, Vietnam put out a rule that you have to register yourself for any social media site. That means they have to know your name, your phone number, and where you live, so they can do this in the middle of the night. I could have been anything when I came over here. My parents, I'm sure, would have wanted me to be an engineer or scientist, but I served in the United States military. I served 25 years in special operations, fighting around the world. And while you slept peacefully at night, I was in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Djibouti, Pakistan, so that this wouldn't be heard. We have an obligation in this country to ensure that people are not oppressed around the world for communism. I fought around the world so that my children don't hear this sound. Because today, we're all Americans here, but our blood is still always Vietnamese. And we'll let that sound resonate throughout this world that we're free. We're free people, and we'll ensure freedom resonates all around. Thank you so much.
Our next guest is going to be Ms. Sarah Euler. She's representing the Human Rights Watch.
I am sort of the Washington director of Human Rights Watch. We are an organization with 600 people around the world spotlighting human rights abuses where they happen. We have a long history in supporting Vietnamese people and in shining a spotlight on the human rights abuses that they are suffering. What I'm going to say is something that you all know, but I just want to again help create the foundation and the baseline for your conversation today here in Congress. The human rights abuses that we have documented remain dire in Vietnam. They include the Communist Party maintaining a monopoly on political power, allowing no challenges to its action. Basic rights are severely restricted, including freedom of speech, media, public assembly, association, conscience, and religion. Rights activists and bloggers face intrusive surveillance from the police, intimidation, harassment, restricted movement, arbitrary arrest, incommunicado detention, and lengthy prison sentences.
torture, beatings to extract confessions. The criminal justice system, including the courts, lack independence. And Vietnam currently has at least 160 political and religious prisoners and detainees, almost all of them prominent activists and dissidents. We consistently here in Washington talk to the Biden administration about Vietnamese human rights abuses, asking them to please balance their interests in Vietnam with condemning the human rights abuses and working toward reform. And here in Congress, we have 3 asks. We ask congressional members to urge Vietnam to release all political prisoners and dissidents, abolish rights-abusing Article 117, which is propaganda against the state, as many of you know, and Article 331, abusing the rights to freedom and democracy to infringe upon the interests of the state, which is within the penal code. And finally, to amend Articles 74 and 173 of Criminal Procedure Code to allow all detainees to have immediate and unhindered access to legal counsel. Again, these are all things that you know, but I wanted to make sure that we note at Human Rights Watch that we are watching, that we are documenting these human rights abuses, and that we will continue to shine a spotlight on them here in Washington. Thank you for having us.
Our next guest is going to be Victor Williams, representing the Victim of Communist Foundation, which is our Vietnamese American we're very close with.
I'm Bob Williams. I'm the Director of Academic Programs for Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. I also served a little time in the Army, 32 years. So you can read about things in books, and then you can experience and see things with your own eyes. And then something about being a first-hand witness to things. I speak of Germany, Berlin. Berlin's a lot different now than what Berlin used to be. I mean, that wall was kept to keep. There wasn't many people coming from the east side coming from the west side trying to go to the east side. There was lots of people coming from the east side trying to go to the west side. I am so impressed with your community. And I first had the opportunity last March to attend your National Vietnam War Veterans Day, and as a retired serviceman, I just want to say what an outstanding job. You should be proud of the recognition that you gave not only to American servicemen but your own Vietnamese veterans, and that was just a special day. I was just totally impressed. So I express my appreciation to the American servicemen and women for what was an outstanding event. We're all aware of human rights violations that are present in today's world, and here in America we're very lucky. We have a virtual security protection, an umbrella, a thing called the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that sort of protect you, where you go. You don't have that in a lot of countries. They aren't afforded that same privilege and opportunity. So, the United Nations, I've heard it mentioned here a couple times, and they do have a Declaration of Human Rights, and I think there's like 30 things saying, what you're entitled to, but when you have certain countries, I won't mention any names, in the Permanent Security Council, and look at what they're doing nowadays, it's written, and go back to what the lady said previously about really a certain country on human rights commission, saying what Russia's doing in Ukraine and what China is doing with the Uyghur populations. Does that charter really carry the backbone and is it enforced? I would say probably in a lot of places it is not. The preponderance of human rights violations are now, I won't speak of the past, but other countries under the yoke of communism. I mean, if there's a human rights violation, you don't have to look too far to see either a communist government or some other form of, tyrannical government that's running things. I was just looking on the internet today, and I saw this famous case, and there's a certain Vietnamese journalist that's facing up to 12 years in prison, again, just for reporting the news. At the Victims Communism Memorial Foundation, we focus on two things. One is the 100 million victims of communism, but even more importantly, I would say today there are 1.5 billion people. Think about that. 1.5 billion people are still living under the yoke of communism. So when the fall of the wall of Berlin, communism still spread. It's still going on. So our focus is on the next generation. You speak about kids, Generation Z, born, 8 to 23-year-olds. They're just a few generations from. They'll be the ones running. They're going to be in charge. They'll be the ones in power. And then I've always heard it. Well, they were, these are smart kids. They were born with a tablet and a smartphone in their hand. They're very IT, savvy. I would say that IT and smartphone was probably a tabula rasa, meaning it was a blank slate. There was nothing in there about communism, and because the majority of younger people, and a lot of this is just based on ignorance, just don't understand what communism means. I've heard it go from good theory to just bad in practice. That's what happened. Now you're hearing more good theory and maybe good in practice, but I'm here to tell you from what I've seen, it's bad in theory and bad in practice. There's no evidence of buts. Kids running around with Che Guevara shirts on. Most of them can't even tell you who he was. Here's an individual that was so bad that Castro didn't want him around. You can't get much lower than that. So a lot of it's based on the curriculum at school. So our focus now is on teaching and teachers. We have a couple programs. We have a teacher certification program. We have a curriculum that's on our website. We have a seminar every year. It runs a week where we bring in people from our witness projects. We bring in academics to teach communism. We want it to be where, we are seeing very positive changes in some legislation where it's being mandated that, communism be covered in social studies and civics, and but you gotta have teachers who are prepared to teach that. If you think about a teacher, a lot of them, some of the younger teachers, 5 years ago, they're learning basically the same things that's being taught now. So our thing is educating teachers, and the last thing I like to say is, who's your first teacher? There's three things. You learn at home. You learn from your parents first. A lot of, growing up in a traditional two-parent families, where there's a lot of single-parent families. So now you subtract that, it's going to be rated by 50%. You didn't learn it at home, you learned at school, right? I think COVID exposed a lot of things. We sort of took our eye off the ball on what we thought was being taught to our kids. So there's some moves to get curriculum changed to where kids are learning about some of these things. And then there's the church. So two of those things, church and family, have always been targets of communism. They actually take those out and they completely control the school by the states. So teach your children well and they will lead the way. So again, it's an honor for me to be invited to come here and speak, and I invite you, here's where I think we can put organizations together that have some of the same, get some synergy and, be combat multipliers for each other where we can sort of attack this thing. Thank you very much.
Our next guest, U.S. Agency Global Media, Charles.
Voice of America is our nation.
premier international broadcasting service, reaching some 200 million people around the world each week from radio, television, internet, social media, 48 languages, including Vietnamese. Established in 1943, Vietnamese is one of the oldest language services of the VOA. Provides 2.5 hours of television programming per week that reaches more than 2% of the adults. Service also has more than 3 million Facebook followers. Vietnamese outside Vietnam tune in to the service website. Vietnamese government's attitude toward the free press is well known. The nation's one-party rule, authority exercise strict control over news. The VOA was chartered by Congress to serve consistently reliable and authoritative sources, accurate, objective, and comprehensive news. It also presents a balanced and comprehensive picture of American institutions. Gives audience an understanding of U.S. government actions, policies, and promotes responsible discussion of policy. One way VOA presents U.S. policy is daily editorials, radio, broadcast, video spots, and over the internet, produced by my colleagues and I as policy. These editorials are clearly identified as such, distinguished neutral, considered by the Declaration of views of the United States government. With an ever-growing global audience of religion, the Bible role during the past year, our editorials have focused on a number of issues in U.S. economic relations. Human rights have been a major. For example, environmental activists imprisoned in Vietnam should be released. An editorial which policy office released for broadcast by VOA services in July of last year expressed the U.S. government's concern over the sentencing of prominent Vietnamese environmental activists, DTI, to 2 years in prison. Travesty in Vietnam, released for broadcast in September, expressed U.S. concern with the decision by Hanoi's People's High Court to uphold the 9-year prison term of renowned Vietnamese author and journalist Van Dong Tran. And Vietnam Human Rights Day 2023 was released yesterday. It gives an overview of human rights conditions in Vietnam, calls on the government to release all prisoners of conscience and respect their basic human rights. Over the years, the USAG Policy Office has received many expressions of thanks from Vietnamese human rights activists for its presentation of U.S. policy carried on VOA. Perhaps the most meaningful came from Dr. Dhuỳnh Đปุ๋I, in 1990 called for Vietnam's government to respect basic human rights, did much to inspire this aim. Thanks to VOA, no, the international community's support for human rights, democracy, true freedom of our country. True freedom in our country. Voice of America and the USAG policy take seriously our responsibility. Tell America's story to the world, present U.S. policy as well, to bring a message of hope and support to the United States government and those struggling to answer the question in Vietnam and around the world.
I would like to introduce Ms. Anne Day, Director of RFA, one of the media that help us every year.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm honored to join everyone today. I also want to extend my gratitude to our steadfast supporters on the Hill, including Representatives Yang Kim and Chris Smith, as well as our friends at the CPJ, RSF, and Human Rights Watch, all of whom have helped support our journalism. A free press is critical to safeguarding human rights, but today those very liberties are under constant threat, and this is especially true in Vietnam. This year, Reporters Without Borders ranked Vietnam as the world's third most restrictive media environment. The first two are actually China and North Korea, which are also RFA countries. In Vietnam, an estimated 40 journalists and bloggers are in prison. That includes 4 contributors to RFA. Nguyen Thuy Thuy, who is serving a sentence of 11 years, he was the vice president of the Independent Journalists Association of Vietnam before his arrest in 2014. He's currently in failing health with limited access to medical care. Tuong Nguyen Nhat, who's serving a sentence of 10 years. He was seeking political asylum in Thailand before being abducted by Thai authorities and sent back to Vietnam. A friend said he's been forced to work 8 hours a day under grueling conditions. Nguyen Van Hoa, who's serving a sentence of 7 years, he was arrested in January 2017 after covering the protests over the government's silence following a chemical spill at a steel plant. And just last month, a Vietnam court sentenced longtime RFA blogger Nguyen Van Thanh to 6 years in prison on charges of spreading anti-state propaganda. They are among the many journalists worldwide who are targeted by authoritarian regimes in an effort to suppress the truth. Their treatment is unjust and unwarranted. The Vietnamese government continues to criticize RFA, denouncing our reporting as false and hostile. But that doesn't stop us from closely covering key issues, such as the recent abduction and disappearance of a Vietnamese political refugee in Thailand, a story which RFA broke, forcing authorities to confirm his arrest. The tumultuous reshuffling of the country's leadership following the presidential nomination in March, and the ongoing investigation into bribery among officials over a price gouging scandal involving faulty COVID tests. Journalists like ours empower people with knowledge and facts about their communities and beyond. As we commemorate Vietnam Human Rights Day, we call on everyone to ceaselessly advocate for independent media and the freedom of those unjustly jailed for expressing their opinions, reporting on events, and sharing information. Thank you so much. Xin cảm ơn.
We must find time to stop and thank the people who make a difference in our lives. President John F. Kennedy, Dr. Nguyen Quốc Quân, a founder who has not been afraid of difficulties and persistently fought for our imperials for more than 3 decades. He was doing human rights when human rights were not popular. For us, he has been a mentor, an advisor, who has diligently pursued and passionately guided our young generation to follow the often challenging path of human rights advocacy. On behalf of Vietnam Human Rights Day, May 11 organization, we would like to present a heartfelt and warm gratitude to Dr. Nguyen Nguyen in appreciation and recognition of dedication and aspiration to have contributed to the ideal of democracy and freedom for Vietnam. Luckily, Dr. Nguyen was not well. That's why Dr. Trinh Nguyen will represent Dr. Nguyen and receive the flag. Thank you.
Dr. Nguyen Nguyen is our founder of Vietnam Human Rights. And our next guest, I would like to introduce the Lao Human Rights Network, Dr. Richard Saisamon.
Thank you, YT, join Vietnam Human Rights Day. So I always be here every Human Rights Day, and so we are the Laotian, and we close neighbor. We have the same problem, the same situation. Laos still communist, and Vietnam still communist. Today I'd like to talk about the Chinese trying to exercise their power to our region. I think right now for the Vietnamese people have the same problem as Laotian, because land grab give the Chinese big investor and take the farmer lands and the agricultural land to those investors. The problem is the Vietnamese and the Laotian, and not only in Vietnam, but they have in Burma. Now it's spread out to south of China. And we have the same problem. I think now is the time for the Vietnamese, Laotian, and many countries in Asia have to act something to stop the Chinese try to exercise power in that region. So, my friends of Vietnamese, and we are the same. We are riding on the same boat. We have to fight the same situation. So, fight together for freedom, human rights. Thank you very much.
Our next guest is going to be the Vietnamese American, the prisoner of Kansas, Mr. Michael Phương Nguyễn. Michael Phương Nguyễn là một tù nhân lương tâm mà anh đã từng bị chính quyền Cộng sản Việt Nam khi anh về Việt Nam, anh đã bị 4 năm tù này ở đó. Thì hôm nay cảm ơn anh đã đến với ngày Việt Nam Human Rights.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Especially those U.S. congressmen and women, or the activists, human rights activists, and the Vietnam Human Rights Day organization. Today, I think this is the first day that I see so many good remarks regarding about human rights. That I believe not too many experience as I do. Before I get captured by Vietnamese government under communist regime 4 years ago, I realized how communist is evil. They don't believe in human. They see everybody is subject. They treat everyone as like an animal. They can capture, they can arrest, or they can put in jail, whatever reason that they believe dangerous to their control. So today I would like to share some of my experience and also recognize some of my colleagues, and also I would like to let you know who was part of my freedom. I'm very honored to be part of this event and very humble to share my experience with everyone to understand the value of the right as a human. While staying in the prison cell for 27.5 years, I realized communism is not human like us, and they treat us like no human. Because everyone under their control, they had no right to talk, no right to speak up, no right to think, and even they're subject to be arrested if they do something that the government believes they are best. As a U.S. citizen and former prisoner under communist country, I'm in touch with reality that truly experience even worse while in prison. The moment in prison is like a silent death, moment silent of death. Every moment. I can see death every day, every passing time. Because there's no enough food, not enough treatment, and every day mentally harassment. That's how Vietnam Communist government control people, especially in prison. Today I would like to take opportunity to raise the voice for all prisoners of conscience. To let everyone consider yourself a humanity. There is enough humanity to aware that another world out there exists, and the world health. People in Vietnam need us to raise the voice for them, to help them, to liberate their lives as a human. So I'm begging everyone, keep doing what you've been doing now as a Human Rights Day for Vietnam. Now, I'm asking all the U.S. congressmen and women in their power to demand Vietnamese government to release all prisoners of conscience before U.S. government engage into strategic relationship in the future. Release all the prisoners of conscience not only for their freedom, but also respect them as a human. The right to be human also. The last but not least, I would like to take this opportunity to raise a voice and dedicate for my two colleagues have been arrested with me while they traveled with me 4 years ago. That's when Đức Thanh Bình and Trần Long Phi. They're still in prison now. And I would like everyone to raise the voice for those two young men have been arrested because they're with me. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank those who raised the voice for my freedom 4 years ago. Those who've been working on every day, trying to help my family, trying to support my family mentally, physically, and also raise the voice for me in U.S. government. Like Senator Patrick Leahy and Tim Fraser and this side. Former Congressman Jimmy Waters, former Congressman Royce, former Congressman Ted Yoho, former Congressman Alan Lowenthal, Congresswoman Joe Lachlan was here earlier, Congressman Ted Schumer, Congressman Al Green, Congressman Lou Correa, and especially Katie Porter to talk about me today. Besides those congressmen and women have working on my case, I really appreciate the people behind that. I would like to recognize this is not former Alan Lowenthal staff, giver staff. Now she is currently a staffer Blue Korea. Formerly from startup Alan Robertson and Ariana startup Eddie Porter. Those three have worked hard out to try to get everything done for those congressmen to work on my case. In work, we are trust. In those I mentioned, I deeply in myself, and you are all my angels. And bravo for those who have been recognized Human Rights Day, May 11 for Vietnam. Thank you.
He represents the Overseas Chinese Democracy Coalition.
尊敬的越南朋友们，你们好。
Dear Vietnamese friend, how are you?
我们大家为了民主自由、反对共产党的暴政已经合作了很多年。
All of us have been cooperating with each other together to against the communist tyranny for many years.
今后还要继续合作下去，为了我们的国家、我们的人民摆脱共产党的暴政，共同努力。
We will still cooperate in the future, so ultimately we could get rid of the tyranny of the communist regimes altogether.
自从共产党实行国家控制的资本主义改革之后，美国和西方国家对共产党的政策开始放宽，对民主自由和反对共产党的民主派减少了支持和关注。
Since the communist parties implemented the state-controlled capitalist reforms, the United States and the Western countries have begun to relax their policy towards the communist regimes and reduced their support and attention to the Democrats who strive for democracy and freedom and oppose the communist regime.
中国和越南的经济也得到了快速的发展，国内矛盾减轻了。然而，共产党对反对派和民主人士的镇压，由于高科技的引进而增加了，形势对我们很不利。
The economy in China and Vietnam have also developed rapidly, and the domestic conflict have since reduced. However, the repression against the opposition and the Democrats by those communist regimes have increased due to the introduction of high technology, which is not very good for us.
最近，由于中共习近平政权对美国的安全威胁增加了，也由于美国越来越多的人认识到了共产党对西方经济的威胁越来越大。
However, recently, due to the increased threat against the security of the United States and the Westerners by the Chinese Communist regime and Xi Jinping, and also because more and more Americans have realized that the threat of communist regimes to the Western democracy and economy is growing. In particular, the Americans are feeling the full penetration of the communists. The situation has changed, and the atmosphere against communists has become stronger and stronger.
特别是美国人民感受到来自共产主义的全面渗透，形势开始发生变化，反对共产主义的气氛越来越浓。现在是我们大家开展工作、推翻共产党统治的好机会。
So now this is the time for all of us to work together to overthrow the tyranny of the communist regimes in Vietnam and China.
希望我们大家继续团结合作，利用好这个新形势，解放我们的国家和人民。
I hope we could cooperate even further
to make a good use of this particular situation and to liberate our country and our people.
谢谢。
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Thank you, everyone, for attending the 29th commemoration of Vietnam Human Rights Days. As we come to close, we also want to thank you to open your office to receive our team to advocate the human rights for Vietnam. We ask that you would consider to co-sponsor for the resolution soon to be introduced by Congressman Michelle Steele and Congressman Dua Korea. We also ask you to support the Vietnam Human Rights Act, soon to be introduced by Congressman Chris Smith. It's also 50 years since the end of American involvement in the Vietnam War. We believe it would honor the ultimate sacrifice of 58, 220 U.S. servicemen to fight for Vietnam. They fight for democracy to finally pass into law legislation for the human rights in Vietnam. Thank you so much.